Welcome to the Physician Leader Group vlog. I'm Ashley Wendel. I am a physician leadership coach and consultant. And the topic I want to talk to you about today is really something that I spend a lot of time doing when I'm coaching and working with leaders around the country. And that is for clinicians, physicians and clinicians who are perhaps moving into leadership for the first time or are expanding their role and moving up into a different role. The question is, how do you best optimize that? How do you make it better? How do you do it more smoothly? And I thought about speaking a little bit about that and sharing some of the tips and strategies that I have to improve this process. Something that I've seen many times is that often the learning curve for people when they either step into leadership for the first time or into a bigger role, it can often be steeper than they expected. So we want to try to minimize that learning curve and do what we can both prior to starting in the role and as you begin. There's really three things I want to share with you. And the first step that I always talk about is just the fact that we need to get ready. Getting ready prior to starting is an incredibly important part of the process. And a lot of times for busy people, they just don't think about this. So you want to be optimizing this period so that when you show up on day one, it isn't just your first day on the job, right? You've hit the ground running, you've got context for what you're doing. And how you do that, there's really three things I have people focus on. The first thing is do your homework simply. Understand the issues of the group. Try to get a sense of the current situation, what the key challenges are, who the key players are, so that when you enter into it, you've already got that information under your belt. The second thing is you really want to be meeting with a lot of the team members and key players prior to starting if you can, because one, this gives you a lot of really good information that will help you start in a better way, but also it lays the groundwork for the relationships that you're going to need when you're there for the work to be done. So you want to begin this process as early as possible. And by doing this, it allows you to assess yourself in entering into this role. So are there any gaps, knowledge gaps, or expertise gaps, or support gaps? Anything that you might need to bolster when you get on the ground there. And knowing this ahead of time actually really helps so that you can set yourself up for success in the process. So that getting ready period is really important. The second step is you want to make sure that you're starting off right. So when you enter in those early days of your job, you have this very unique opportunity, a very short window of time for you to establish people's perceptions of you, to set expectations of you. And it's really important during this time that you position yourself as a learner and somebody who's an active listener and somebody who's very organized and prepared for the job ahead, right? So as you enter into those early days, I want you to think about and consider, how are you introducing yourself, right? How are you showing up for people when they first meet you? And this really sets the tone. It sets how people think of you, what they expect from you. It demonstrates your working style and your ability to partner, which they're going to be assessing you on, right? So think about how you introduce yourself. The second thing is you need to spend a lot of time learning about and really fully understanding the work that you're there and the group that you're there to work with, because that's going to help you shape and frame the work that you're there to do. And to do this, you need to listen a lot. And in fact, in those early days, it's really critical that you spend more time listening than talking, okay? You really need to get a sense of how you fit into the culture that already exists. And not only that, you want to understand any efforts that are already in motion and have respect for that. Because too often what I've seen is people jump in, they want to add value from the second they get in the door. And the problem is they are not listening and the people on the ground feel disrespected. So you want to spend the majority of those early days doing a lot of listening. The third really key thing is that you really need to establish those important relationships, establish them, make time for them. You know, are you dedicating enough face-to-face time with people wherever possible? Even if it's on camera, even if it's on Zoom, are you making a demonstrated effort to do that? And the other thing is, are you asking them questions? Are you curious? Are you asking open-ended questions to engage them, to understand from them? That makes a big difference. So the third part of this is, how do you really thrive in your role? So once the initial learning curve is over, once you're feeling more comfortable that, that's behind you, which typically, honestly, is a good 60 to 90 days out, at least it should be, right? You still need to keep your eye on making sure you're mastering and applying those very critical leadership skills. And there are many, but there's two that I really want to share with you that I think are incredibly important in this process. The first one is, you want to pay attention to how well you're avoiding what I call new team leader pitfalls, right? So you want to keep an eye on, are you talking more than listening? That is a problem. Are you working hard to impress, or are you feeling pressured to have all the answers and provide all the solutions, which again is not your job, right? It is not your job. It's to engage others to help them engage in the solution definition. Another thing I often see people pitfall is that they tend to rely on what has made them successful in the past to make them successful in this new environment. And what I will say is that, it's never the same, right? So most often what made you successful somewhere else is not necessarily going to make you successful here. And certainly moving from a clinical world into a leadership position, definitely what makes you successful in the clinical realm is almost counterintuitive and opposite of what makes you successful in the leadership world, right? So in the clinical world, you're an expert, you're a fixer, you go and you have all the answers, and that's your job, and that's appropriate in that world. As a leader, that's not your job, right? So you need to be able to switch hats and switch gears and recognize that, because it really feeds into the second thing that's the most critical thing, is that focus on building trust, right? Building trust and safety. And you have to do this in a way that is not just words, but is done through actions. And I think the most important thing is, consider how well you're trusting other people's follow through. Are you trusting them to make decisions? Are you empowering and delegating things to them to actually have a say in some of the things that happen? Are you bringing in a very strong sense of collegiality and collaboration, right? Meaning, are you giving space for dialogue, right? Are you not just stating your opinion and moving on, but are you actually curious and interested in other people's points of view? And if you are you doing it in a way that allows them to feel that you're hearing them and that their voice has been listened to? Very important. And resisting that urge to micromanage and control is incredibly important. And I know it's hard, especially in the beginning. I know how hard that is. But those are really key points in terms of building yourself, making yourself be successful in the beginning. It's very, very important. So starting off your leadership role, or your transition into a higher level role, starting it off right and continuing to thrive, this is not always an intuitive process. I'll just say that. You have to be incredibly intentional. You have to think about how you prepare. You have to think about how you spend those early days, and you have to think about how you can continue to apply effective leadership skills as you go, right? And continuing to bring people into the fold. And it does take time and effort and energy. I get that 100%. But the dividends far outweigh the costs in this regard, right? So doing this, you're much more likely to be successful in this transition, and you're much more likely to have a team and help, and you're going to feel more fulfilled. So I wish you luck in this process, certainly. And if any of you are interested in a coach partner in this process, certainly reach out to me. Or if you just want to know a little bit more about how coaching can help in this process, I'm more than happy to walk you through it. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for spending a few moments with me. And until next time, be well, everybody. Take care.